Hi, Mark Cannell from Auckland Rescue Helicopter Trust, here to talk to you today about landing zones or LZs. Rough sort of shape, 40 by 40, approximate scale here given by the sheets of A4 with our mock-up of the AW169. Shape, ideally sort of rectangular, squarish, but it doesn't have to be bang on. Slope is an issue potentially with the aircraft, so if you paced out 10 metres across any part of this pad, especially where it's going to land, and it changed by more than a metre, so a 1 in 10, that slope is too excessive. Surface, if you were going to walk out here and go, I wouldn't be happy putting my ambulance out here or my fire truck out here, then it's not ideal. The aircraft's not likely to shut down. We can hover offload, but the aircraft won't be shutting down. Surrounds, not only the 40 by 40 metres, but have a look at the surrounds both in the position behind the aircraft where it's going to land, where it's going to fly in from, where it's going to depart to, and also on the sides. They all make an impact, so ideally nothing too high within that immediate environments of that 40 by 40 metre. The sun at times can be an issue. The crew will deal with it on the day. Wind is very important, and we're going to talk to you briefly now about how to indicate wind. So the aircraft like to come in and land into wind, and then they also like to back up and take off into wind quite often. So for the purposes of this, the black arrow is indicating the wind. For someone on the ground setting up this LZ, you'd also want to have some additional security. So you'd want people on each of the corners looking outwards, protecting the LZ, and then the person up where the arrow is indicates the wind. So the wind is at his back or her back, arms up nice and high, which means that the wind is now coming from my behind and going to my front, and that's how you indicate the wind to the helicopter. Over and above that, other considerations is have a look around the greater sort of area. If there's a power pole or a pylon over here, you'd want to relay that to the crew. The other potential issues are, especially in the Auckland area, is a lot of stock in the immediate area. So you might have horses in this paddock here, which now means you either have to move the LZ or you move the horses from the paddock. They can cause damage to themselves and people also. Loose articles can be a real issue, especially once we start to operate this aircraft in the vicinity of the 5-ton. Heavier aircraft, more downwash, to the point where some people have stated it's quite hard to stand up. So things like corrugated iron, towels, sewer sheets, blankets, etc., they all have the ability to get blown out. Unfortunately, sometimes they may get recirculated back in the disc, causing significant damage to the main rotor or the tail rotors. In some circumstances, this kind of damage has resulted in the aircraft crashing. A good way you can indicate wind and the LZ boss up front is by use of a handheld smoke flare. Make it very, very, very handy. At night, the use of flashing strobes on each of the 4 corners help to define it from the rescue scene, and also a 5th strobe can indicate where the direction of the wind is coming in from. Prior to entering the disc, the best way to do it is ideally wait for the crew to shut the aircraft down or the crew to come to you. If, however, there's a burning need for you to come into the helicopter to assist or ask a question, you must get a positive thumb. So a positive thumb to one of the crew members, you'll get one in return, and then you can enter or exit that area that we call the disc. Couple of caveats with that: you do not want to approach from the downhill slope. So if there was a slope here or a knoll or something like that, you would not want to come up the knoll to come into the aircraft. We have some very defined entry and exit lanes, and we referred to these using the clock code. Clock code is 12 o'clock on the nose, 6 o'clock on the tail, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. We do not want people entering or exiting the disc between the 10 and the 2 o'clock position, or aft of the 7 through to 5. So if you're entering from this side, you'd want to be entering on this kind of angle in through here after you get that positive thumb from the pilot. At night, a little bit hard to see people if they wanted to give a thumb, so we ask that you put a light up, backlight your face, and then one of the crew members will flash with another light system on board to indicate that you're now cleared to enter the disc. Once the aircraft's landed, if it continues to keep running, then we ask that the scene guards on the corners, they maintain their position or wherever you're going to be stationed, to make sure that people don't start to try and sort of access the scene. Quite often you get people who are with best intentions to help out. Unfortunately, they may end up hindering or make the situation unsafe. Every now and again we do find that once we've loaded the patient, we might be doing some work inside, and then we look up and we see that our pad security, or the people looking after our LZ, they've disappeared. So we do ask that you stay in the immediate vicinity until the helicopter has departed. With the strobes on your vehicles at night, we ask that you leave them on unless you're told via the radio to turn them off. So communications is best achieved through VHF channel 10. So for the fireys, that's zone A, channel 10, and that's got brackets helicopter use. Right, so channel 10, and quite often it's a little wee small button on the side of your handheld which is set to UHF when in fact you need to be channel 10, zone A, VHF. Now and again we can run into issues with the aircraft problems, especially in these pads. Historically, this is where some of the helicopters have come unstuck, so if anything bad happens that results in people getting injured or an accident occurring, then go through the 111 system, advise police, and also if you get a chance, go through the 0508 accident. So that'll put you through to Wellington, their air accident. So 0508 accident is the number that you call once you've done the 111. Your priority is to get people extricated from the wreckage. You do as much as is required to save human life. If everyone's deceased, then it effectively becomes a sand containment area only. If the area becomes involved with fire, so the aircraft structure is carbon fibre, please stay away from the fire. If you can't do anything to save human life, there are real chances of some quite significant respiratory disorders if you start to inhale this carbon fibre once it's been burnt. To indicate the at night, you can also use a couple of vehicles. The idea of setting up the LZ vehicle lights is that the cars want to be in the downwind position, so their wind is coming from this direction here. The helicopter is going to approach from this area here. You'd want to set the vehicles up before the helicopter arrives so that they are angling the lights back in towards the centre of the LZ. The idea for that is that the landing point where the pilot's going to put the machine down is clearly backlit by the vehicles. If you can imagine having the vehicle's lights back this way, as he's coming down, he may actually get blinded. So akin to trying to go up the motorway and someone driving back at you with full beam. So for that reason, vehicles on the downwind side of the pad, backlighting the pad for the helicopter to land. So thanks very much for your time. If you've got any questions, feel free to drop us an email or give us a phone call and we'll attempt to clarify.